quick break. I just want to say thank you for all the people around the world, Jamaica, Germany, Asia, Europe, South America. Thank you for listening to Leap of Health. Thank you for the support. And remember, my book is out. You can find it on Barnes & Nobles and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Thank you again for all the support. And now, back to our episode. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Alex Valgood, and this is Leap of Health. And today we have Devorah Kur. We're going to be talking about logotherapy. She also has done reflexology. Correct me if I'm wrong. Right? Yes, that's right. And grief counseling. So we're going to be talking about all this. But before that, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you get to this point? I know you also released a book just a few months ago.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. It's so nice to be on the show with you. Really exciting. And well, how this all started is it all started because of my own life circumstances. I had a career in interior design. I have a very creative side of me, and I was loving my career. This was in my 20s. And then my father was diagnosed with colon cancer, and he was terminally ill. And I became very interested in reading whatever I could get my hands on about the patient and what he can do to help himself. And the more I read, the more I became interested. Like, I want to help people do this too. I want to help people become active participants in their own healing journey. That not everything is given over to doctors, but that the patient actually has a role to play in his life going forward. And he partners with the doctors. So my father, unfortunately, passed away. And about within three years after that, I decided one day, that's it, changing careers. And I thought a good way to get into the healing world would be through reflexology. And I know before the chat, we started recording, we were just chatting a bit, which was fun. And I was telling you that reflexology was wonderful because I could work with people who were struggling with medical issues and medical problems, work through the hands and work through the feet to make changes in the body. But it was difficult because firstly, I was seeing people who were suffering from whatever their illnesses were or their ailments or their diseases. Why do they have to have them? And I didn't really have the skills to help them. And so when you asked about the logotherapy, when that came into my life, I was very excited about that because logotherapy, and I'm not sure if your audience knows about logotherapy or, how much I should introduce. Okay, so I'll introduce logotherapy. So the founder of logotherapy was in the 1930s, Dr. Victor Frankl, and he lived in Vienna, and he was a Jew. And he had an opportunity actually to leave before the war started, but he felt if he did leave, he wouldn't be able to take his parents with him. And so he thought it would be better to stay and look after them. So he made that decision to stay. And then because they were Jewish, eventually they were taken to the concentration camps. And before the war, he was very interested in the human condition of overcoming difficulty and challenge. And so what he did once he was in the concentration camps is he was the same as everyone around him. And it was like a human experiment that will never be repeated, where everyone had the same circumstances: no food, no clothes, no hair, no names. They were numbers. Everyone slept the same, ate the same, worked the same, everyone's conditions were identical, yet people did better than others. So how come if there was typhoid going around, not everyone got it? And he was fascinated. What is it about the human condition that you can rise above such challenges? And he writes, his book is called Man's Search for Meaning. And my book is based on his book, but for the health and medical side. Mine is called Man's Search for Healing. So in his book, he writes about how every day you could see people walking around in the camps who would see someone who was like absolutely weak and despondent and just giving up, and they'd go and encourage them and say, here, you have half my piece of bread. And he said, and those people still managed to wake up the next day on half their food ration. How did they do that? And he said that when someone has hope for the future, or someone can feel like their work is not yet done in this world or in this lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
then they can get to a future place. And he himself speaks about that. One day he used to also lecture at university, and one day when he was working on meaningless work in the camps, he was working on the railway tracks, and he thought, wow, his hands are usually used for healing, and now they're used for nonsense, right? So he thought to himself, he had this vision of his future that one day he is going to lecture about how he survived. And
Mm-hmm.
he didn't know when that day would come. He just knew he was going to be okay for it. So there
Right.
was something planted inside of him, and he calls it the defiant power of the human spirit. When you just will overcome, you will make meaning of whatever the situation is. Okay. And so once I started learning about his method and his way of working with people, and it's really is changing your why me questions to what now.
Mm-hmm.
Because Alex, none of us live in Disneyland where we wake up every day and there's donuts and coffee and everything's wonderful. Life is sailing smooth. None of us live like that. Everyone has challenges constantly, and it's if we approach that and we come towards that as what now, like, whoa, I would never have chosen this, but for some reason I've been chosen, and how can I rise up now? My daughter has this wonderful saying on the wall in her bedroom, which says, I didn't know how strong I was until being strong was my only option. Like, we don't actually know how awesome we are until we're put in a situation where we have to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't wake up on a regular Sunday and think to myself, what can I do today to be great? No
Yep.
one does that. But when we are pushed and challenged and we are fighting a disease, or we are fighting a challenge in our lives, or a relationship breakup, or a difficulty, or a trauma, and we just cannot get through that. When we are in the midst of that, if we can dig deep and find, well, what are my tools? How have I done in the past been able to get through difficult things? I've had some practice at this before. What can I use from them to help me now?
Mm-hmm.
When we can do things like that, then we're not looking from the why me anymore. We're looking at, well, what now? What can I do? I might not be able to take this disease away or this condition away, but I can certainly work on my attitude, work on my, seeing hope for the future, how I could maybe help others who might be in similar situations. Like, we can always put ourselves in a situation where we feel like we are the active participant, that we are helping ourselves as well. And this helps our immune system also, because um, our immune system works on, if serotonin or dopamine are released from the brain as chemicals into the bloodstream, this helps boost immunity in the body. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what we want to be able to do, to boost our immunity in the body, to help us with whatever kinds of medical difficulties or challenges, or even in depression, or with traumas, because I'm a trauma therapist as well, somatic experiencing, I'm a SEP, and we have the ability to overcome. We have something inside ourselves, and so it's helping people to align with that and tap into what they have, the tools they already have, to access and help themselves in difficult situations.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing how like you mentioned that like when we're faced to something like really crucial in in our lives, most of us we then have a different perspective like of not
Mm,
going down, but actually helps us to if you have like some sort of health scare in my situation, I had several health scare throughout my life, and each
mhm.
time I go through that, it helps me to just be stronger every time
Wow, that's
to have
beautiful.
that urgency of like my life might be over tomorrow. What am I gonna do today?
Exactly. And I love that you're saying that, because we actually have no clue when our life will be over. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it could be this afternoon. We have no clue. And I
Right.
always say to my clients, like, if you woke up breathing today, you have a second chance. You know that this is our day. And if we're always going to be waiting for, I'll do it then, I'll do it then, maybe later, maybe when the right conditions are around, that's when I'll do it, then we might actually never get it done, and we might actually also never get the opportunity. So
Mm-hmm.
today is our opportunity to firstly harness, exactly as you said, previous times when you have overcome something, you've learned something about yourself. I can do hard things. And that message in your immune system is preparing for today's challenge. So to actually give yourself and empower yourself that you have the tools to work through this. And I think the important thing also is that the goal in life is not really to live forever. No one wants to turn 1,000. You know, the greatest of human beings haven't lived forever. Mother Teresa, Mandela, Moses, and the greatest of human beings have passed away. That
Mm-hmm.
is the nature of life, and it's going to happen for all of us. So the big question is, how will we live our life? How will we fill the days that we do have, even if we know there is a terminal disease that is in our future? And I think this is something I'm very passionate about with working with people, because I have a chapter in my book which is called The Difference Between Being Healed and Being Cured. And I did a lot of research for this chapter because I think Western medicine has the ability to cure people, but not to heal them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I think in the past it used to be like, if you had a broke your arm, you went to the doctor, and if you broke your heart, you went to the psychologist, and those two things have nothing to do with each other. But today we know that they have everything to do with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, for me, it is I love to help people find the place of healing. That even if we can't get rid of this disease, or even if this is something autoimmune and it's going to be around for the rest of your life, there's still a way to find healing around it, even if we can't be cured.
Mm-hmm.
And even if someone has a terminal disease and they know they might have 2 months left, that doesn't mean that they can't come to peace and sort out relationships that weren't good, and do those things and write those letters and have those last things which bring healing.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are options, and this is where I like to empower people. Let's not look at what we can't change. Let's look at how you can suit up for what you can change and what you can do, because it's such a beautiful thing. I'm thinking back to one client I had who was young, in her 50s, who had pancreatic cancer, and she died. She did eventually die from it. But when she first was diagnosed, she was so bitter that this was her end, and it was going to be soon, and she hadn't done her living yet. And then
Mm-hmm.
she thought actually she hadn't done any living, because she'd lived her whole life bitter anyway. And she decided, well, if she's only got 2 months left, she's going to do these 2 months differently. And she started mending and healing relationships. And it was just in the most exquisite turnaround to see. She had felt she didn't have a proper childhood because her father had died when she was very young. She was 7 or something like that. And she had to be a big girl from that age. So she didn't feel like she had a childhood. She said, for the next 2 months, I'm having a childhood. And she did all these wonderful things to connect so beautifully with the people she loved. And by the time she did die, she actually was healed. She was healed as if she'd completed this life. So it's not about the do we die or do we live till, 500. It's about how do we live,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that we are going to all die. It's 100% guaranteed for all of us. It's like not something that is ever going to change. So it isn't about when we'll die. It's about how are we living. And this is something that I love to speak to people about, because we all have that option how to do it. Even if someone is poor and they get a sandwich, someone gives them a sandwich, they can go and eat it in a corner on their own, or they can share it with someone who's also hungry,
Mm-hmm.
right? No, it doesn't matter what our situation is, we can always find meaning, which brings purpose to life.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, when you talk about terminal illness, right? Some people, unfortunately, my dad also passed from cancer, and these are individuals that have the almost the deadline for them, right? They know the almost the date they will go, or this frame
Yeah,
time when they will go. But in
yeah,
reality, it's kind of like if we really understand life, we know that we're all gonna die. And if you put
yeah,
it in that perspective of like, this patient with cancer and terminal illness is gonna go in 2 months. If you are human, you know you're gonna go. We don't know the
yeah,
exact day. It's kind of
yeah,
like a surprise. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, or it could be in 10 years or in 50 years if you're blessed enough, right?
yeah,
But either way, I feel that understanding the concept and what that really means, and
yeah.
you're making peace with it, I think it gives us a different chance to really live.
To live, absolutely. In some way, I feel like because I've worked with the clients of terminal patients, and I've worked with the terminal patients as well. And in some way, the terminal patient, he has an opportunity, almost a gift, to put things in order. He has a chance to
Mhm.
end life right, you
Yeah.
know. And for the family members, it's terribly hard because they're losing someone, and they also themselves have an opportunity to say goodbye in a good way. But as you're saying, and also, and my condolences for losing your dad. It's
Thank
such a hard thing when we lose the people who we love. um in a sense, um, because we know this knowledge, that life is going to come to an end for all of us, we should use it well. Whether it doesn't have to mean illness wakes us up to this, like Sunday could wake us up to this,
Yeah.
or Tuesday. That this is something I feel very passionate about working with people. Today's our day.
Hmm.
Let us celebrate it and do good with it.
Hmm. And in your research and work and reading Dr. Victor's book, what did you find about how do you guys do? Because I know you mentioned he saw people that even though they share the bread because they were hungry, they will still uh, they will still die sooner than others, right?
Yeah.
How how did he find out? How do you do it? How do you make these people that had lost hope in general
Yeah.
change?
So I think that's a big word you use there is hope. If we have hope and we can see a future and we can work towards it, then that is also planting, there's this idea, what you think about, you bring about,
Mhm.
right? That if you can see and you can have hope for the future, then that does something to the internal part of who we are. Okay. And if we can, he also speaks in his book about faith, that faith is something that can, if you don't feel alone or abandoned in your journey. And relationships, if you can build relationships, and if you can also feel, wow, I must pull through this because someone still needs me, then that is fostering hope.
Mhm.
Or there's so many things that we can draw on to, like he said, he saw that he still had things to teach, he had lessons to impart, and so he was going to do that,
Mhm.
in some way or another. So I think, in any situation we can do that. And I'll just share with you, Alex, that exactly 1 year ago today, I had a terrible, terrible accident. I fell on my head and I broke my neck. It
Oh,
was a terrible. I broke my neck.
yeah.
I fractured my C2. And this is a very dangerous vertebra to fracture because it is so close to the spinal cord, and the complications are death or paralyzed.
Paralyzed.
And as you can see me bobbing around here in front of you, thank God, um, I was very lucky in the way that I fell, and where the fracture was on the vertebra, that my spinal cord was intact. But I remember lying in the hospital and waiting for the doctor, feeling absolutely petrified because I knew something was very wrong. And when the doctor came to tell me the diagnosis, and she said to me, your neck is broken. You're lucky you're not paralyzed. You're lucky you didn't die, and don't move. That's all she said to me. And my first thing was, my first reaction was, who breaks their neck? You know? And then my next thought was, I'm going to help people. People are going to learn how to get through this because I'm going to be fine. And I didn't know yet what fine would be, but I did know that that I would be fine. Whichever, I didn't know what fine meant. At that point, I knew I wasn't paralyzed, thank God, and I didn't know what it would mean. Would I ever be able to move my neck, or what would be the implications, or how much help and for how long? It was a long journey to recovery, but I knew inside I will be okay, and I'm going to lecture about this. And now I do. It's a chapter in my book, How I Broke My Neck. And it's also was the culmination, because it was quite scary when I fell. I was locked inside a room by myself, and I was on a physiotherapy strap apparatus, which was attached to the door. So the door was bolted so that it was extra protected. But then the strap malfunctioned and opened and dropped me on my head. So that was how I had the accident. And because of all the tools that I have from my past, the logotherapy, the trauma therapy, I knew and I could help myself in the moment of, yes, I know I'm locked in a room all by myself, and there's going to have to help is going to have to come and break me out of here. And yes, my body is shaking and going through trauma. I could help myself because of my tools. So when I wrote my book, it really is to help people help themselves. Like each chapter goes through a different kind of ideas of what one can do to help themselves in different situations. So the one chapter I speak about the mind-body connection, how to know that there is what goes on in your mind is going to play out in your body. And what plays out in your body is going to affect your mind. And we have to bring these two things together to understand how our bodies communicate to us about life. So if we can be more in touch and connected to our bodies, we'll be able to understand the symptoms, like the little wake-up call from internal as to what needs to change, what needs to be worked on. Right? So I have a whole chapter on that. I speak about illness. I speak about, as I said, the difference between being healed and being cured. And another chapter that I speak about is forgiveness, because there's a huge, huge role that forgiveness can play in the person's well-being. And it actually has nothing to do with the perpetrator. There's a lot of myths. I look at all the myths around forgiveness. People think, well, if I forgive, then that means they were right and I was wrong. It doesn't mean that. Imagine every day waking up and pulling around with you a big ball and chain, strapped to your ankle, and pulling this through you, trying to get through the day today while you're pulling all this past hurts and pain and sorrow and grief, and you dragging this around you all day. And imagine if you could just unlock it and leave it in the past. That's what forgiveness is about. It's about setting ourselves free from the hurts that others have caused us. It's not about setting them free. It's about setting ourselves free. And I bring also case studies that I've worked with and a lot of research I did around forgiveness for people to be able to understand it's a letting go and releasing process, which is done to honor the self. It has nothing to do with a person who hurt you. They've gone on and actually are living their lives perfectly well without you. And you are the one who's carrying, and it's time to put that down. Only you are being hurt from this. So I speak a lot about forgiveness because I want to empower people in a process of being able to let go and release. It's not up to us. We're not responsible for other people's behavior. we are only responsible to our own behavior. And this is another thing Dr. Victor Frankl says. He speaks about right action, right? He says something we can learn from wrong action is right action. This was done to you. You make sure you right that in the world by doing what is right. And
Mm-hmm.
that by me is also what forgiveness is about. Let it go. You don't need that negative, traumatic, hateful energy in your system anymore, because that's what breeds disease. What you
Mm-hmm.
need in your system is a loving space. You need to show up for the hurtful part in your life in a beautiful way, in a caring and loving and accepting and nurturing way. And you can't do that if you're carrying so much hate around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about anyone else. It's only about honoring ourselves in our own healing journey to be well and healthy. And then it comes back to then we can live the life of today. I celebrate life. And it's not celebrating a life that's filled with pain from the past, but it's filled with joy and love and gratitude for what is today and what might be present today.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And I know you talk about individuals, like you and me that have like these um hope and trying to always, it doesn't matter what happened to us, we will definitely look for the light, right? In the darkness.
Mm,
What happens to those people that are too deep inside? What role does the community, the
mm,
family, how do we help them when we see them? Sometimes a lot of people has like homeless family members or deep in whatever trouble they are, and
yeah,
they seem hopeless to us, and
yeah.
we see them and we're like, well, they're hopeless. There's nothing we can do. What's the role that we play in all this with individuals, like in this case, like Dr. Victor saw that, regardless his help or his willingness to for this other individual to get better and survive and look for that light. um what do we do? How do we help them? What's our role in this? Is it just like leave it
Yeah.
as is?
No,
Or how
look,
do,
it's a
how
beautiful
how
question.
how do
Yeah,
we
it's a
do
beautiful
this?
question. And the question I can hear is filled with so much pain, because sometimes we can't help people if they themselves don't want to be helped. So that is very, very hard. We can, I don't know if you know the statement, you can take a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. With
Mm,
the greatest of intentions, and my area of expertise is not drug addiction, but one can take a family member to a rehab and lock them up. But if that person doesn't want to be rehabilitated, the best of your intentions is not going to help them. So I think the way that we can best show up for another human being is being compassionate to their pain. No one chooses to be homeless, right?
mm,
It is because they're in so much pain and suffering. And maybe if we could extend love and appreciation and not judgment for what they're going through, but we can just help ignite, that little flame in them, which was born whole and was born perfect and got hurt along the way to bring it to be in the situation and circumstances that it's in. If we can reignite that flame for them,
mm,
then maybe they can move from that place. But we can't make anyone do anything. We can't change anyone. People often say to me, oh, if he would just stop this behavior, everything would be perfect. But
mm,
that's not how life works, because we can't stop someone else's behavior. We can only show up for them in an empathic way of, I see you going through a hard time. Do you want to speak about it? I'm
mm,
here for you. And I might not be able to give you money or help change your situation, but I can listen. I can be here to hold your hand. I might not be able to, change it, but I can be here for you. And I think that is, at the end of the day, what Viktor Frankl was also offering in that place. He couldn't tell them, the war is going to end. We're all going to be saved. we're getting a great meal this weekend. He could tell them nothing. He could give them nothing, but he could just listen to the pain, and he could try and remind them who they are, that they might have forgotten along the way. And I think also, if we ourselves are in this place where we feel so helpless and desperate, sometimes we can't just do it on our own. We need to go and reach out for help. And you mentioned community. I think community plays a huge role. Even knowing, when my neck was broken, I could not move. For a few weeks, I was confined to my bed. I couldn't move. I had to rely on people. I had to. And I didn't look at it as if I was burdening them. I actually looked at it as if I was blessing them with the ability to help me. If a friend calls you up and says, please, I'm not feeling well, I have no Tylenol, could you get me some? Would you be able to pick up some painkillers for me, please? You would feel with pleasure. I would love to help you. If someone phones you and said, I've had an accident and I just can't cook. Could you bring me a meal? You'll say, thank you for asking. So when we are needy, instead of looking at it as if I am hopeless and helpless, we could look at it from another perspective of, wow, I have an opportunity to give someone else the ability to help me, which brings blessing and joy to them. How beautiful is that? If we can step out of ourselves and see that maybe my difficult situation is making someone else feel better about themselves. So we always have that option.
Yeah, that's a really amazing point to make right there. I think we're always teaching each other in some sort of way, and then we forget that too. And then also we have I don't know if it's like culturally or just, or human condition of having such a hard time asking and receiving help.
Yeah. So I am really driven to help women get over this, because no man is an island, and you can't pour from an empty pot. You wouldn't say to your car, please, the car's flashing, get me gas, get me gas. You wouldn't say, please, I need 50 more miles, because the car is going to say, shut down. You didn't get me. I don't work. But yet, as women specifically, we push ourselves to do more, to go more, to become doormats until we're finished. And that's when, people often step into my clinic in that state. That's not going to help, because if you love art and you go for an art class, think of the mood you come home with, that you bring with loving energy to your family. But then I feel women are, I can't go. Wow, the guilt that comes in. Now, what does it mean if I go to an art class? What it means is that you love yourself enough to bring love to your family. You
Such a
wouldn't say
weird
to the
concept. Yeah.
yeah, you wouldn't say to the car, no gas till tomorrow. You just wouldn't. So I really am on a mission to empower women. Take care of yourself, because you're taking care of so many others. On the airplane, they say, put your oxygen mask on first. You can't help a child if you are dead.
Exactly.
That's what, so that is actually like a life rule. You have to help yourself first. So
Yeah.
I really, really believe in that. And another chapter that I speak about in my book is gratitude and attitude. That even when there is so much that is missing and wrong and hurting in our lives, there is still so much that is working. Like even while we're speaking now, to think of the millions of body functions that are taking place. When you blink, your eyes are moistened, and when you swallow, your throat is cleansed, and when your heart beats, it pumps blood, and the liver is cleansing all the toxins, and the kidneys are making urine to get rid of the things you don't need. Like, there are millions of processes that are working that sometimes we don't even realize until they're not working. So by having an attitude of connecting to, this is really, really painful in my life right now, but I also want to connect to what is working right now, which can help pick me up a little bit, right? So that is also empowering, because it's not that this difficult challenge in my life has sucked me under, but it's more that that I am helping myself come out from being sucked under by bringing things in to help me. And in trauma therapy, this is something we use, which is called resources. So we all have resources, all right? And in the moment when I fell and I broke my neck, I was locked in a room all by myself, petrified,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely petrified. I knew something was wrong. It wasn't like, oh, damn, I stubbed my toe. You know, my body was shaking. It felt like there was internal bleeding. I knew something was wrong. And I'd watched enough like medical sitcoms to know don't get up and try and unlock the door. You know, like
Right.
do not move. I managed to squirm out the way because I knew someone was going to break a door open to get me out. But that I managed to do. But in that moment while I was panicking and tearful and scared and alone, I looked around. I'm like, I'm in my bedroom. My bedroom has good memories. Let me find some of them. And I was looking at photographs and I was looking at my plants and I was thinking of all the things wherever I turned, my eyes, I rested on another thing which could help me in that moment not feel so scared.
Mm-hmm.
So these are called resources. And we all have resources of things we've done well at some point, of something where, like you said, you've overcome things before, and that just helps you today.
Mm-hmm.
I heard this wonderful story. I don't know which hospital this took place at in New York City, in the trauma section at the beginning of COVID, before vaccines, right in the beginning, where in New York there were so many deaths after death after death of people dying alone and by themselves and
Mm-hmm.
under such sad conditions. And all the head of the trauma, or the head of the surgery, was interviewed in this one hospital, and she was asked, how are you coping? What is helping you get through all of this tragedy and helplessness? If you don't know, you haven't studied this, you're at a loss just like everyone else. And
Mm-hmm.
she answered so magnificently, and she said, I have been preparing my whole life for this moment. you know it's not like we are expecting bad things, but bad things do happen. And when they
Yeah.
do, we learn who we are because of it. And if you know who you are, then when bad things happen, you know who you are. You've learned it before. You can show up well. You can show up strong. You can get through this now because you've gone through other things before.
You make me tear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we all have that. We all have, and sometimes life has been too traumatic, and we forget that. And sometimes we can't help ourselves, which is part of the reason why I wrote this book, to give a tool to people to help themselves, you know. And and I see you getting emotional, and it's probably because you know what I'm saying is true, that there is that part in us that is resilient, that can rise up and overcome what's happening. And even if, like I said, we can't be cured, or even if it means that this will be our end. I didn't know before the ambulance got to me and the paramedics got there. I didn't know if I wasn't going to die in the room by myself. I didn't know that. Okay. But then again, I thought, okay, let's not go to that line of thinking, because that's not going to help me. Let's rather go and let me look at my resources and the beautiful plant that I've been nurturing in my bedroom that's growing across the wall. Let me see how much joy that's given me. And where do I find that in my body right now in this moment when I'm feeling scared? Because I need a hug from that plant right now. So it's even with the small things, you know. And it's not about, well, when the big things happen, I'll find out who I am. We have to practice these things on a daily basis. When cars pull in front of us in the highway and we get angry, that's the moment when we got to look for, how do I calm myself down? I've got tools for that. If we practice it on a daily basis, when the big things come, we can suit up.
Yeah. I had a
Mm.
moment here. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think remembering all these things that we take for granted, you know, just in general, everything, like all the little things around us, what we do, what we have. It's just
Yeah,
those are the resources that we can always get.
yeah, yeah. And the truth is, like, if we don't have those resources and we were never exposed to them in our lives, we can we've seen those resources on TV shows. We've seen, like, if you didn't have someone to look after you, you can imagine what it would have been like if Mary Poppins was your mom. You can import her to difficult times in your past, you know, where she was just there for everything. Or what
Mhm.
was missing for you if you had no example of a mother who behaved in a certain way. You can find it. There's enough resources out there to find. You can make an avatar and you can help yourself heal, or you can go and have some therapy sessions, to work on this, to try and help you find that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
There's so much hope out there.
exactly. And when we feel that there's hope, that's logotherapy. Like, that is helping us to find meaning in what I'm going through now.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And it's life is all, we have so many possibilities out there that, even though life feels hopeless for a lot of people because they're in different situations, maybe, they have to get a second job, they're worried about their kids, a family member sick, they just went through an accident and all that, we still can manage to see possibilities.
yeah, yeah,
And life is full of them. So even I feel like, even when we feel at our worst, or like I'm not enough, I don't have this, I don't everything, literally,
yeah,
as you said, if you're breathing, if you can open your eyes and see that there's a whole day ahead of you, I
yeah.
think that's
He,
just.
he used to say, Dr. Frankl, that every day was exactly the same, with this harsh labor and the cruel guards, and the torture and the killing. Everything was too terrible. He said, but at the end of the day, he knew the sun was going to set and it would be pretty. And he looked forward to it every day.
Yeah.
How awesome is that?
Mm-hmm.
He knew every day there's going to be a sunset. He could take pleasure in that. And that just helped.
Yeah. Yeah, we get caught up in our heads so much sometimes. But just
Yeah,
remembering where we are, remembering who we are, and remember all these things, that impossibilities out there. It's just like our biggest gift every
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
This has been amazing and a roller coaster of emotions. I do thank
Yeah.
you for being here today. If anybody wants to find your book or connect with you, where can they find you?
Okay, thank you, Alex. It's on Amazon, and they just search for Man's Search for Healing by Devorah Kur, Devorahkur, and you'll find it there. I also do online therapy, so I think was one of the blessings that COVID brought about, that
Mhm.
we can be connected anywhere in the world. So if anyone wants to get in touch, you can contact me through my website, which is dkwellness.co.il. So, and maybe you can put those up with the link, and people can find me there.
Yes, definitely. I will put all your links and information on the show notes for everybody that wants to contact you. For everybody that wants to know more about the show, you can find me at alexbelgood.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, everywhere pretty much. Also, remember, my book is out and you can find it on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. It's called Parents Are Greatest Teachers. Uh,
Mm.
yes, yes. If you guys have any questions or wants to talk more about it, please do send me a message. I always respond to everyone. Um, I'm so full of great feeling and just so grateful for having you today. This has been an amazing conversation, and it
Really,
really brought me to
mm,
tears.
yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
that's
Thank you.
wonderful speaking with you.
No,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you for everybody that is listening. Hope you guys got some really good tips from this and some really good gold nuggets for your life. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. Thank you for being here today. And everybody, please have a blessed day today.